All right, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our second workshop of the Podcasting 101 series. Today, we're going to focus on editing, and specifically, David, myself, and Brandon will speak a little bit about our experiences editing on different platforms. I will be presenting on Adobe Audition, showing you my workflow, some of the things that I have found helpful in my time. So the first thing that I think everyone will echo to a certain extent today, I hope, is the idea of having a template. So I personally have a template, and essentially, maybe it's because my podcast is quite modular, but it starts off with the same introduction every single time. And I'm realizing now that I may not have shared computer sound when I started, but we'll find out in a sec.
Hey everyone, I'm Simar, a student at Harvard University, and
So you can see that it's the same introduction every single time. So this template works really well for that, right? It's the same introduction.
Hey everyone, that many podcast.
And then this is a guest-specific introduction.
In today's show, I spoke to Helen Kochobi.
Right, so this is not relevant, right, for this one because I'm editing the Chang one, right? But I can edit that out, right? I have the music already set up with the fade, so it's much easier for me to just put it in the template, and then also at the very end, I just zoomed out, right? I have the conclusion and the concluding music, so it's a good workflow for me, right? That I can just upload my audio and save as, and then go from there, which is what I'll do right now. So I have my my guests audio here. I'll just paste it in right about here, and then I'll in interview, and then I'll put my own audio on host right here. These are both downloaded from Zencastr. If you have the premium version of Zencastr, you could also use post productions and get one single file. But this is what you can get with the free version of Zencastr: two separate audio files, specifically two separate MP3 files. And my approach to editing, right, is really going about a couple of different things. First off is taking off any any annoying filler words, right, that are okay in conversation, but when you're hearing them back on podcasts, they can get a little bit annoying. Other thing is that trying to remove the gaps between when, for example, I finish my question and Dr. Chang, for example, answers, right, because to make it seem like more natural conversation. And then, of course, taking out any background noise and all that all the while. So, I mean, I'll just move this a little bit here, right? So that's on the fade. That's not, and then we can get into it. And the point of this workshop, at least my 20 minutes, will be, or 15 really, will be to show by doing. So let's get into it. Okay, so that's the first thing, right? You hear breath sound, right? We'll hear it again.
Hi, Dr. Chang. Welcome to the show. Thank you so.
So we heard the breath sound here, right? So we can do one of two things. One thing we can do, right, is specifically cut it out, right? So we can drag it here, so we can cut it out, and that'll get rid of the breath sound, which is one way. The other way that actually might be preferred, at least initially, is to edit out this breath sound. So I'll explain what I mean in a sec. So we'll hear it again. So I can select this breath sound. I can go to waveform, right? So you can see right here. This is essentially just showing you the audio, right? And you can see that whatever this breath sound is not a true, I guess, audio as my dialogue is, right? It is sort of this spectral haze. So what we can do then is we can go to effects. We can go to effects, go to noise reduction, and we can do capture noise print. You can see that I've selected the place of interest. Capture noise print, I just captured it, right? Then I Command A, so I select the entire audio, go to effects again, go to noise reduction again, and do noise reduction process, right? I've set it up so to do noise reduction about 100%. The settings too much aren't that important, but I'll just apply it. And essentially it'll apply this over the entire audio. So what it's doing is it's looking for any of that same breath sound throughout the audio and automatically taking it out. I could have very much just removed that, right, and been done with it. But this one will help me, I hope, down the road a little bit by taking out any breath sounds preemptively. So it's a good tool. You should be careful in that you don't accidentally select your audio, right? Because then you don't want to, like, for example, your dialogue, right? And you can see that the spectral haze kind of disappeared, and you hopefully disappeared from the rest of it. So you want to be careful that you don't select accidentally, like, where you're actually speaking, because that might ruin the audio if you apply it otherwise. But that's a great tool. So let's go hear it back.
Hi, Dr.
And you can't even hear the breath sound, right? Out of just good practice, I'll still take out until I start speaking, until the waveform, just to be cleaner. And what I also like to do is, I personally don't like you can hear here, you'll see here that
We normally start the podcast.
there's something that's happening with him, something that's happening on his end. So I personally will take out, just take it out what he's saying. I just dragged that audio. It's still there if you ever want it, which is a good thing, but you can drag it out. Some people like having the reactions and having hearing Dr. Chang speak, so you can always include it. But I know he's not saying anything at the beginning. But let's go back and just hear it through, because that's the way you do everything. You just hear it back.
Hi, Dr. Chang. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking the time out to speak with us.
Okay, now the breath sound. Right, that one's maybe it takes a lot of time just to do all that noise reduction thing. So this one I'll probably just take out. I'll just go like this. I just drag my cursor, and then what I do here is Option Delete. What Option Delete is it's pretty much a ripple. Actually, well, I'm not going to do Option Delete. I'll tell you what Option Delete does in a sec. I'm just going to delete it, right? So that just deletes it. If you wanted to do Option Delete, you can. Right? What Option Delete does, it's ripple time delete. So it moves it accordingly too. The danger with there, however, is that now all of a sudden your audio isn't aligned, right? It's fine if you're dealing with one audio file that synchronize both your audios. I usually do that nowadays, but if it's two, you want to be careful of that. So I'll just delete that for now. If it sounds awkward with this pause, I can always move things around.
For taking the time out to speak with us. So
it does sound a little bit awkward, so I'll just drag it a little bit closer, and I can drag this here accordingly, right? We can fix.
Time out to speak with us. So we normally start the pod.
You can hear there's a little bit of a.
We normally start.
There's a little bit of a weird sound here.
We normally start.
There's not too much I can do right now at the moment, and I mean there are advanced techniques where you can go about it. So there are acceptable levels of issues that, I mean, it's probably not worth the effort to try to edit it out. You can hear the wheeze a little bit awkward.
So we normally start the podcast by asking the question, why did you decide to study medicine?
Well, okay, so now you see that this is what I meant by trying to fix any spaces between when someone stops talking and started talking, right? So we hear the blank, and then he really starts talking here, right? So I can just drag that here, right, and just move it to a line more closer to there.
Why did you decide to study medicine?
Well, Simar,
so you can see it's much more natural now, much more conversational.
First of all, thanks for having me on here.
Okay, we heard our first It's very exciting. You will become an expert, I hope, at recognizing ums.
Here.
So you also don't need that click. That click's horrible. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ripple time delete. I know I told you what I said about ripple time delete, but we can always move things around after the fact.
Well, Simar, first of all, thanks for having me on here.
Okay, so now you can see that I just ripple time delete, and I got rid of the and click, but it sounds a little bit, that you can hear that it's been edited, right? And we'll hear it again just in case you didn't miss that.
Thanks for having me on here.
Right, there's a sudden change, right? So how do you go about do that? Well, first thing is you might not want to be as aggressive on the ripple time delete as I was in that scenario, right? So you might be a little bit more forgiving, right? You might leave a little bit more time on either end, right? But that doesn't always work. What tends to work, and I found is work. We'll hear once again though.
Me on here.
Right. What tends to work is to fade in, fade out, right? So you click here, right? You can see that there's a little bit box that comes in, right? You can fade this out a little bit, right? Because you can see the issue is that you go from having actual volume to suddenly going to zero volume, right? So you can fade it out a little bit, right? So that it sounds a little bit more natural and the connection is smoother, right? It takes a little bit fine tuning sometimes, but it really goes a long way. And you can tell when something's been edited, right? Versus when it's it's been edited, but it's a little bit smoother. So let's hear it again.
For having me on here.
And you can hear that it's smoother, right? It's not perhaps it's not perfect, right? But you wouldn't notice it probably otherwise if I'm a lay listener.
Having me on here. I guess I'd answer that by saying that I started out life as an engineer.
I heard the click again. It's just a small thing. I won't be too aggressive because I like the space that he left there. It's natural, it's conversational.
I grew up in a.
We can hear that again. Maybe I was being too aggressive.
I grew up in a family where almost everybody was an engineer on both.
You don't need to take out all ums, right? I think it's okay, and there's an acceptable level of ums.
Engineer on both.
and especially if it's so much intertwined with conversation. But for the sake of editing here, let's just try it, right? Because it's a good skill to learn.
Engineer on both sides of the family,
that works.
except for my mom, who was a nurse. And
Okay, see that's an issue. It's the and the breath sound, right? You have to be attentive to this. And if I was editing this for realsies, I'd have headphones on so I could really be attuned to all these small things that come on. Right? I'm not wearing it right now for the sake of Zoom recording, but you might miss some of these if you aren't paying attention. So it's important to pay attention. So let's hear this again. Right, that's an issue. Ripple time delete, again, that's just option delete on the Mac.
Was a nurse, and my father was.
And you can hear that it's a little bit edited there, right? So we can just fade out a little bit. And let's, maybe that's a little bit too aggressive fade out. Let's just see that again.
Who was a nurse, and my father was an automotive engineer who really built things and tried to fix.
Okay, now I'm getting really annoyed that he's saying right? And he's saying it multiple times, right? Some people just say it and that's fine, and some people will tell you you don't need to edit it out. I personally am getting annoyed.
Who really built things and tried.
So I'm gonna, this seems like I can take it out pretty easily. I won't take out every because that'll probably be a pain. But this one I feel like I have space at the end, right? It's pretty distinct. So let's try to take it out. Just triple time delete, option delete.
Engineer who really built things and tried to fix things around the house all the time. And so I grew up wanting to be an engineer, and I just assumed that people did that when they grew up. And
okay, same issue here. And now I'm getting a little bit repetitive. But I'll just do this, and then I'll show a little bit some other features I like about Audition.
Yeah, when they grew up, and when I went to college.
So you can see that you get pretty clean, right? You get good at sort of estimating that. Okay, if I want to cut out this, right, I should. You can zoom in, right? Really take out what's the waveform is showing and not what else is there. So that's one thing. Fade in, fade out is your friend. Right? Sometimes you'll want to just manually raise the volume, right? Which you can do just by dragging this yellow bar up and down, right? To decrease or increase, right? So that's good to know. Sometimes you'll want to manually sort of just this section of audio, you'll want to just decrease, which you can do by just clicking clicking the yellow bar, right? And that allows you to set it up, right? So that maybe you just want this part to be lower for whatever reason. Sometime that I've used this is if there's a weird noise in the background while someone is talking, right? So they're in the middle of a word. I can't just take it out, right? But if I can just lower the audio there a little bit, right, then maybe you don't hear the weird artifact as much, right? But the word still gets across. So this is just a good tool to have in the back of your pocket, right? That you just click and then you can specifically change audio for specific parts. Looking at the top bar, which is really interesting. This is if you want to drag stuff around. This is if you want to explicitly sort of do the ripple time delete I was showing. This part is a nice part. It's a razor, right? So you can just cut parts out, right? And that helps you more specifically delete, right? I've been showing you dragging, right? Like dragging this, dragging that, but you can also explicitly delete stuff, right? Just with the razor, right? You can just cut things into pieces and delete it, right? And cut into how many pieces you prefer. That's all good, well and good. So you can see that, there's a lot of functionality with Adobe Audition, and I'm only getting to the bare basics. You can also record with this record button, right, if you want to record your introduction, as I did, right? You can see that, you can fade in, fade out, as I've already explained. And I think the workflow I have right now is the multi-track mixdown, right? So this is a good workflow designed for podcasting, which is really great. When you're just about done with editing your podcast and you want to export it, you can just go to File, Export, Multi-track Mixdown Entire Session, right? And then you can export it as an MP3, WAV, or whatnot. Usually you should export as MP3 because WAV is a great file type, right? It's lossless and whatnot, but it's too big, often too big for these hosting platforms to be able to contain. So MP3 is a good way to download. And you can just see that I just do what I just did, but I do it throughout, right? I'd be more specific. I'd look for the ums, right? I look for the pauses, and I just make it clean, right? Because it's an important audio experience, podcasting, right? The content will get you so far, but really editing is where the podcasters differentiate themselves, right? Content at a certain point, anybody can do content, but editing right? It takes a certain touch. So I think I won't belabor the points I made. I will remind you about the helpful nature of the waveform, right? That you can specifically capture some parts, right, and look at it more granularly, right, with the waveform, and then that gives rise to noise reduction. There's a lot of some other effects here that you can peruse at your as you wish. David, for example, will talk a little bit about EQ in his presentation. But yeah, no, I think that's just Adobe Audition in a nutshell. Harvard offers the platform for free, which is a great plus and a great sell. It's a great platform to edit podcasts. I think it has more functionality as GarageBand and Audacity, but I'm sure David and Brandon might have something to say about that. And with that, I will stop my presentation and thank you for tuning in.